Today, we will explore the extraordinary life of Nelson Mandela, a man whose courage, determination, and wisdom changed the course of history. His story is not only inspiring, but also a powerful way to improve English skills. By reading carefully, learning new vocabulary, and understanding sentence structures, you can practice English in a meaningful and engaging way. Stories like Mandela's allow learners to connect language with real events, ideas, and human experiences. Let's begin our journey into the life of a true hero and learn English along the way. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the small village of Mvizo, in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His birth took place during a period of global change, as the First World War was coming to an end and many regions of the world were beginning to reconsider their political futures. Mandela entered society marked by deep divisions, shaped by traditions on one side and expanding colonial systems on the other. His family belonged to the Thembu royal lineage, though his branch did not live with wealth or luxury. Instead, they lived close to the land, following rhythms that had guided their community for generations. After a few years in Mvizo, his family moved to the village of Kunu, where Mandela spent most of his childhood. The village offered wide open spaces, green hills, and a sense of belonging that shaped his early memories. Life there was simple, built around farming, herding cattle, and observing cultural ceremonies that emphasized community values. These customs taught him the meaning of cooperation, discipline, and respect for elders. He learned to listen, to watch carefully, and to understand his place within a broader network of people. Those early lessons deeply influenced his character and remained with him throughout his long life. Mandela's father served as a local chief, responsible for helping resolve disputes and guiding community decisions. From him, Mandela inherited not only a sense of leadership, but also the awareness that authority required fairness and wisdom. When his father died, Mandela was still a young boy, and his life changed significantly. He was taken under the guardianship of the Thembu regent, who believed in the importance of education and personal development. This new environment exposed Mandela to ideas and responsibilities far beyond the boundaries of village life. As part of his upbringing in the regent's household, Mandela began attending mission schools. There, he encountered formal education for the first time, including subjects such as English, history, and geography. Although he came from a traditional background, he adapted quickly to the discipline of the classroom. Education opened a path that connected him to a world he had never imagined, and he developed a strong respect for learning as a tool for progress. Mission school rules were strict, and the environment often felt rigid, yet Mandela understood that these lessons were shaping his future. During his school years, he grew increasingly aware of the complex social structure of South Africa. He could see the early signs of racial hierarchy and the restrictions placed on black South Africans. These observations were initially confusing, but they planted the first seeds of questioning in his mind. Why should opportunities be limited by race? Why did some people enjoy rights while others were denied them? Although he was too young to form a complete vision, he sensed that these divisions would one day require resistance. Mandela's academic performance and developing maturity eventually led him toward further education beyond his village. His journey from rural life toward the broader South African landscape had begun, setting the foundation for the historic path he would later follow. As Mandela entered his teenage years, he moved to the royal residence at Mkekazwini, where the Thembu regent acted as his guardian. This transition marked a significant step in his development. The regent's home was a place of constant discussion, where community leaders gathered to speak about important matters. Although Mandela was not allowed to participate, he often observed the meetings and learned by listening. He witnessed how disputes were settled through reasoning, patience, and compromise, shaping his understanding of leadership as service rather than power. He continued his schooling at a nearby mission institution, where he experienced a structured academic environment and came into contact with students from different regions. His subjects expanded to include politics, literature, and world history, giving him a broader perspective on society. He also became more aware of the inequalities that defined South African life. While the mission school encouraged discipline and moral values, it could not hide the reality of a country shaped by segregation and limited rights for the majority population. In this period, Mandela underwent the traditional rite of passage into manhood, an important cultural ceremony for the Thembu people. The event connected him to his heritage and responsibilities, reminding him that adulthood carried expectations of courage and commitment to one's community. Although deeply rooted in tradition, the ceremony also made him reflect on the changing world around him. He sensed that his future would require balancing respect for his culture with the demands of a rapidly evolving nation. After completing his mission studies, Mandela was sent to Clarkberry Boarding Institute, an elite school aimed at educating young men from prominent families. Life there required strict adherence to rules, careful attention to academic work, and participation in physical activities. Mandela adapted well, improving his confidence and gaining a stronger sense of independence. The school environment exposed him to new ideas about social responsibility and personal ambition. He learned the importance of discipline, punctuality, and self-management, qualities that would later help him endure long years of struggle. From Clarkberry, Mandela progressed to Held Town, a Methodist secondary school known for its strong emphasis on order and academic excellence. The institution encouraged students to think critically and to take pride in their achievements, yet it also reflected the racial divisions of the country. Even in this structured environment, Mandela could not ignore how race influenced expectations and opportunities. He noticed that success for black students was often framed within limits defined by the colonial system, and this awareness sharpened his growing sense of injustice. His desire for higher education led him to the University of Fort Hare, one of the only institutions in South Africa offering quality Thai university training to black students. At Fort Hare, Mandela encountered a wider mixture of cultures, political ideas, and academic challenges. He studied subjects such as law, administration, and philosophy, all of which deepened his understanding of leadership and governance. Although he arrived with a quiet nature, he soon became more confident, more socially engaged, and more aware of the political tensions shaping the country. Fort Hare marked the beginning of his transformation from a rural student to a young man ready to enter public life. The experiences he gained there laid the foundation for the direction his future would take, pushing him toward the long journey that awaited him. Mandela's time at the University of Fort Hare was intended to continue smoothly, but events soon shifted the course of his life. The university maintained strict administrative policies, and when student dissatisfaction grew over issues of representation and fairness, tensions escalated. Mandela found himself among those who believed that the students deserved a stronger voice in their own affairs. Although he was not yet a political leader, he supported the call for change and participated in collective action that challenged the institution's expectations. The administration responded firmly, demanding that the participants withdraw from the protest. Mandela was given a choice: return to classes under specific conditions or leave the university. His sense of principle would not allow him to compromise, and he chose to depart. This decision ended his formal studies at Fort Hare, but also marked an early moment in which he accepted personal costs in defense of collective rights. It was a quiet foreshadowing of the courage he would display in later years. Returning to his guardian's home, Mandela faced disappointment and uncertainty. The region hoped Mandela would continue his education smoothly, and the conflict created tension between them. Discussions about Mandela's future soon turned toward marriage arrangements, a customary expectation for a young man of his community. Mandela, however, felt unprepared for this step, and the idea of an arranged marriage conflicted with his growing sense of independence. Realizing that remaining would force him into a life he did not choose, he made a decisive and dramatic choice. He left the Eastern Cape and traveled to Johannesburg, beginning a journey that would redefine his future. Johannesburg presented a stark contrast to the peaceful rural settings of Mandela's youth. The city was busy, unequal, and deeply shaped by racial laws. Different communities lived under sharply divided conditions, and opportunities for black workers were restricted to unskilled or low-paying roles. Mandela quickly felt the pressure of urban reality as he sought employment. He worked briefly as a night watchman and then found a position as an article clerk at a law firm. Thanks to the help of contacts who recognized his potential, working in the legal environment became a turning point. Although he had not completed his degree, he was surrounded by attorneys who handled cases involving the oppression of black citizens. He observed how the law could be used both to restrict and to protect, depending on who controlled it. This experience strengthened his resolve to continue his legal studies, and he eventually enrolled in correspondence courses to complete his education. Mandela's understanding of the law grew not only from textbooks, but also from witnessing real struggles faced by people who were denied justice. During this period, Mandela broadened his social circle, meeting individuals who introduced him to political debates that were gaining momentum across the country. Conversations about equality, national identity, and resistance helped him develop a clearer picture of the challenges confronting South Africa. The city exposed him to organizations working for change and to thinkers who believed that the future depended on collective action. Slowly, he shifted from observation to participation, taking his first steps into political life. This phase of Mandela's life forged his resilience and sharpened his awareness. Johannesburg transformed him from a young student searching for direction into someone prepared to face the realities of oppression and the responsibilities of leadership. By the early 1940s, Mandela had fully immersed himself in the challenges of urban life, balancing work, study, and the growing awareness of political inequality. He joined the African National Congress, ANC, an organization dedicated to promoting the rights of black South Africans. The ANC had existed for decades, but faced criticism for its cautious approach. Mandela, now in his mid-20s, recognized the need for stronger, more organized efforts to challenge the systemic oppression embedded in South African laws. His involvement marked the beginning of a lifelong commitment to social justice. Mandela's legal studies continued alongside his political activity. He completed his law degree through the University of South Africa, UNISA, gaining the qualifications necessary to practice as an attorney. Law provided him not only a profession, but also a tool to fight injustice within the system. He understood that knowledge of the legal framework was essential for challenging apartheid policies and for defending those who were unfairly targeted by the authorities. His education strengthened his confidence, and he began to envision a future in which the law could serve as a means for meaningful social change. In Johannesburg, Mandela also witnessed firsthand the hardships of ordinary people. Many black South Africans lived in crowded, underdeveloped areas with little access to basic services. Jobs were scarce, wages were low, and the threat of eviction or arrest loomed constantly. These experiences deepened his empathy and intensified his desire for change. Mandela realized that political action could not be abstract. It had to respond to the daily struggles of communities facing economic, social, and legal oppression. During this time, Mandela formed close alliances with other young leaders who shared his vision of equality. Together, they began organizing youth leagues and community groups that sought to raise awareness and mobilize citizens. The goal was to create a unified effort that could influence policy, challenge discriminatory laws, and prepare for a broader movement demanding rights and recognition. These early organizational efforts laid the groundwork for campaigns that would later capture national and international attention. Mandela's work extended beyond formal politics. He encouraged literacy, promoted education, and supported initiatives to improve living conditions in poor neighborhoods. He believed that empowerment came from both knowledge and collective action. Through his interactions with residents, he learned to listen carefully, understand grievances, and balance the urgency of change with strategic planning. This approach shaped his style of leadership, patient, disciplined, and inclusive, yet firm in principle. In the mid-1940s, Mandela became increasingly involved in anti-colonial and anti-racist initiatives across the country. South Africa's racial laws were growing more rigid, with the government codifying segregation and limiting opportunities for black citizens. Mandela observed the widening gap between law and justice, noting how the authorities used legislation to enforce inequality rather than fairness. His legal expertise, combined with practical experience in organizing, positioned him as an emerging voice for resistance. Mandela's reputation as a thoughtful, determined, and principled young leader began to spread. By the end of the decade, he was recognized not only for his intellect, but also for his courage in taking on risks that others avoided. He was no longer a student or novice. He was becoming a central figure in a struggle that would demand decades of personal sacrifice and relentless dedication. By the late 1940s, Mandela had established himself as an influential member of the African National Congress. The ANC Youth League, which he helped organize, advocated for more assertive strategies to challenge racial discrimination and expand political participation. Mandela and his colleagues promoted a vision of equality that went beyond symbolic gestures. They sought practical reforms that would improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. The Youth League emphasized disciplined education and organized campaigns, reflecting Mandela's belief that meaningful change required both strategy and persistence. During this period, Mandela's legal practice also grew. He worked with allies to defend individuals who had been unjustly accused or arrested under oppressive laws. His cases often involved workers' rights, evictions, and unfair treatment by authorities. Each case reinforces understanding that the legal system was both a tool for oppression and a potential instrument for justice. Mandela became adept at navigating complex regulations while maintaining a moral commitment to fairness. This dual focus on law and activism defined his approach to leadership and strategy. The 1950s were a time of rapid social and political change in South Africa. Laws restricting the movement, employment, and political participation of black citizens intensified. Mandela recognized that legal advocacy alone could not dismantle the growing system of apartheid. Mass mobilization, public protest, and nonviolent resistance became central to his strategy. He organized campaigns that encouraged citizens to challenge unjust laws through collective action, civil disobedience, and community engagement. His approach combined courage, organization, and careful planning, demonstrating his ability to inspire others while minimizing unnecessary risks. Mandela's personal life also evolved during these years. He married, started a family, and balanced the responsibilities of parenthood with the demands of political work. Despite the pressures, he remained focused on the broader struggle, often prioritizing the movement over personal comfort. Mandela understood that leadership required sacrifice and that the path to equality was long and difficult. His commitment to principle sometimes put him at odds with colleagues or authorities, yet he remained steadfast in his pursuit of justice. In 1952, Mandela and other leaders launched a defiance campaign, a coordinated effort to resist unjust laws through peaceful but deliberate violation of segregation regulations. The campaign targeted laws restricting public assembly, travel, and other freedoms. Thousands of volunteers participated, and many were arrested, including Mandela himself. The campaign demonstrated the power of collective action and marked a turning point in the struggle for equality. Mandela's visibility increased, and he became known nationally as a leader capable of organizing mass movements with intelligence and discipline. Through these campaigns, Mandela also deepened his understanding of strategy and negotiation. He realized that resistance required both moral authority and practical planning. He studied the social, economic, and political structures that supported apartheid, seeking ways to challenge them effectively. Mandela learned to balance bold action with careful foresight, a skill that would define his leadership for decades to come. By the end of the 1950s, Mandela had become not only a skilled lawyer and activist, but also a symbol of determination and hope for millions of South Africans. His growing influence reflected his unique combination of intellect, courage, and moral conviction. The foundation was set for the challenges that awaited him in the decades ahead, as he prepared to confront a government determined to maintain racial oppression at all costs. In the 1960s, the struggle against apartheid intensified, and Mandela's role became increasingly central. The South African government responded to growing resistance with harsh repression, passing new laws to limit political activity and detain activists without trial. Mandela understood that peaceful protests alone were no longer sufficient to challenge a system determined to maintain racial dominance. He and his colleagues began exploring more strategic forms of resistance, emphasizing discipline, organization, and careful planning. Mandela co-founded a military wing of the ANC, designed to prepare for a situation in which conventional political methods were blocked. This decision reflected a shift in tactics rather than a loss of principle. He remained committed to equality and justice, but recognized the necessity of self-defense and organized planning against a powerful state. Mandela trained, advised, and coordinated operations that were intended to target infrastructure rather than civilians. The goal was to challenge the government's authority while minimizing harm to ordinary people, demonstrating his enduring commitment to moral responsibility even in extreme circumstances. Despite these measures, Mandela faced constant surveillance and harassment from the authorities. His home and offices were frequently searched, and close associates were imprisoned or forced into exile. The pressure of political activism, combined with personal sacrifices, demanded extraordinary resilience. Mandela relied on patience, discipline, and careful planning to navigate these dangerous conditions. He also understood the importance of international support, building relationships with allies around the world who could amplify the struggle for equality in South Africa. In 1962, Mandela was arrested and charged with leaving the country illegally and inciting workers to strike. His trial drew national and international attention, and he faced the possibility of long-term imprisonment. The courtroom became a stage for demonstrating principle and courage. Mandela used the opportunity to explain the injustices of apartheid, the denial of basic rights, and the need for systemic change. His words inspired many and made him a symbol of resistance, even before his long imprisonment began. In 1964, following further charges related to acts of sabotage, Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was sent to Robben Island, a maximum security prison located off the coast of Cape Town. The conditions were harsh. Prisoners endured hard labor, limited communication with the outside world, and constant surveillance. Mandela's physical environment was designed to break spirits, yet he approached his sentence with remarkable discipline. He focused on self-education, reading widely, discussing ideas with fellow prisoners, and maintaining routines that preserved both his mental and physical health. Prison life also offered Mandela an opportunity to strengthen his leadership in subtle ways. He encouraged unity among inmates, promoted education, and mediated disputes. He used these years to reflect on strategy, justice, and reconciliation. His resilience, calm determination, and refusal to compromise his principles under extreme hardship became legendary. Even in isolation, Mandela remained a symbol of hope for those fighting for equality outside the prison walls. During these decades of incarceration, Mandela's influence continued to grow. Activists inside South Africa and a broad campaign for his release, recognizing his moral authority and strategic vision. His endurance and dignity under oppression illustrated the power of perseverance, discipline, and unshakable commitment to justice, shaping the future of South Africa in ways that extended far beyond the prison walls. During his imprisonment, Mandela became a central figure in the international struggle against apartheid. Countries, Organizations and individuals around the world began to demand his release and the dismantling of racial segregation in South Africa. Economic sanctions, cultural boycotts, and diplomatic pressure increased, amplifying the influence of the anti-apartheid movement. Mandela's moral authority, patience, and unwavering commitment to justice inspired not only South Africans, but also millions of people globally who recognized the universal importance of equality and human dignity. Even behind bars, Mandela engaged in careful negotiations with the South African government. He understood that lasting change required dialogue, strategic planning, and compromise without abandoning core principles. He communicated with officials to discuss conditions for release, the potential for democratic reforms, and the end of apartheid. These discussions demanded both tactical thinking and moral clarity. Mandela's ability to maintain his principles while exploring peaceful solutions reflected his deep understanding of leadership and the long-term vision required to transform a divided nation. Mandela's reputation as a unifying figure grew steadily. Inside prison, he worked to reduce conflicts among inmates, promote education, and encourage constructive dialogue. Outside, his name became synonymous with courage and moral integrity. Activists used his story to rally support, and government applied pressure on South Africa, understanding that Mandela's freedom symbolized the possibility of systemic change. His leadership showed that influence does not depend on physical freedom but on moral authority, strategic thinking, and the ability to inspire others. After more than 27 years, Mandela's release in 1990 marked a historic turning point. The world watched as a man who had endured decades of harsh imprisonment emerged without bitterness, committed to reconciliation and justice. His approach to leadership emphasized negotiation, inclusivity, and a belief that former enemies could work together for a common future. Mandela's release was not only the liberation of a single individual, but also the beginning of a broader transformation in South Africa's political and social landscape. Mandela immediately became involved in building a democratic South Africa. He participated in negotiations to end apartheid, working tirelessly to ensure that the transition included protections for all citizens. His strategy focused on compromise where necessary, steadfast commitment to equality, and creating institutions capable of supporting a unified society. Mandela's ability to balance firmness with reconciliation allowed the country to avoid large-scale conflict during this critical period. His vision extended beyond political change. Mandela emphasized education, economic development, and social cohesion as essential components of a healthy democracy. He encouraged programs that addressed historical inequalities, promoted opportunity, and fostered a sense of national identity inclusive of all South Africans. Through these efforts, he demonstrated that leadership required long-term thinking, moral clarity, and the courage to pursue justice even when confronted with resistance from multiple sides. By the early 1990s, Mandela had transitioned from prisoner to statesman. His reputation as a principled, patient, and strategic leader positioned him to guide South Africa through one of its most challenging and important transformations. The decades of struggle, reflection, and disciplined action culminated in a moment that symbolized hope not only for South Africa, but for the world. In 1994, Nelson Mandela achieved a historic milestone. He was elected as the first black president of South Africa in the country's first fully democratic elections. His victory represented not only the end of apartheid, but also the triumph of resilience, moral courage, and the persistent struggle for justice. Mandela's presidency emphasized reconciliation, nation-building, and the creation of institutions that would protect the rights of all citizens regardless of race. He sought to transform a society divided by decades of oppression into one united by equality, opportunity, and shared responsibility. Mandela prioritized healing and reconciliation. He encouraged former adversaries to work together, fostering trust between communities that had long been divided by fear and hatred. Truth and accountability were central to his approach, while he insisted on confronting past injustice. He also promoted forgiveness as a tool to prevent cycles of retaliation. His leadership style combined empathy with determination, demonstrating that true power lies in the ability to unite rather than punish. Education and social development were among Mandela's key focuses. He believed that long-term transformation depended on providing opportunities for young people and improving conditions in historically disadvantaged communities. Programs promoting literacy, healthcare, and economic empowerment reflected his understanding that political freedom alone was insufficient. Mandela worked to ensure that democracy delivered tangible benefits for all citizens, helping build a society capable of sustaining equality and opportunity over time. Mandela also recognized the importance of symbolic leadership. He used public appearances, speeches, and initiatives to inspire confidence in the country's future. His personal example, marked by humility, dignity, and moral integrity, reinforced the values he wanted to instill in South African society. He avoided displays of personal power and wealth, emphasizing instead collective progress and shared responsibility. Mandela understood that the credibility of leadership depended on demonstrating the principles one advocated. After completing a single term as president, Mandela stepped down in 1999, establishing a precedent of voluntary transition of power in a young democracy. His departure from office did not diminish his influence. He continued to work on global issues, including peace, human rights, and education, while remaining a symbol of courage and resilience. His later years were devoted to charitable work, public advocacy, and mentoring new generations of leaders committed to justice and equality. Mandela's life story, beginning in a rural village in 1918, shaped by education, struggle, imprisonment, and eventual leadership, demonstrates the power of perseverance, moral courage, and vision. His experiences illustrate that leadership is forged through discipline, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to principle. Across decades of challenge, Mandela remained consistent in his dedication to justice, demonstrating that change requires both strategic thinking and ethical conviction. Nelson Mandela passed away on December 5, 2013 at the age of 95. His death prompted global reflection on the life of a man who had transformed his nation and inspired the world. His legacy endures not only in the institutions he helped build, but also in the values he championed: equality, reconciliation, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Mandela's life serves as a powerful reminder that one individual's courage and commitment can change the course of history, leaving an enduring impact on generations to come. The story of Nelson Mandela is one of struggle, resilience, and triumph. From the hills of the Eastern Cape to the presidency and beyond, his journey demonstrates a profound effect of education, discipline, and ethical leadership. His life remains a guiding example for those who seek justice, equality, and a better world. Studying English through stories like Nelson Mandela's offers more than language practice. It provides lessons about courage, resilience, and the value of knowledge. By following his life from childhood education and struggle to leadership and reconciliation, learners can expand vocabulary, improve reading comprehension, and strengthen writing skills. Mandela's story shows that learning is a lifelong journey, just as the pursuit of justice never stopped. Let us continue studying, reading, and growing, inspired by his example.